Sarah's hands trembled as she scribbled the warning on the bill. Her heart pounded so violently she thought the entire diner could hear it. Across the booth sat a man in an expensive suit, calmly sipping his coffee, completely unaware that in exactly 90 seconds a bullet was going to tear through his skull. She had to make a choice right now. Stay silent and watch a man die, or risk everything she'd worked for, everything she'd built for her daughter, on a complete stranger. The bill landed on his table with a soft tap. Gunman behind you. Escape before it's too late. This is the story of how one desperate warning changed 2 lives forever. 5 hours earlier, Sarah Jensen woke to the sound of her daughter crying. Emma stood in the doorway of their cramped bedroom, clutching her stuffed rabbit, tears streaming down her 6-year-old face. "Mommy, the mean lady was here again," Emma whispered. Sarah's stomach dropped, the landlord. She pulled Emma into her arms, feeling the weight of failure crushing down on her shoulders. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's going to fix everything. I promise." But promises were expensive, and Sarah was drowning in bills she couldn't pay. The eviction notice on the kitchen counter gave her 30 days. 30 days to come up with 3 months of back rent, or she and Emma would be on the street. Her father's pension had run out years ago, and the 2 jobs she worked barely covered food and utilities. She kissed Emma's forehead and got dressed for her morning shift at Riverside Diner. The same diner where she'd worked for 3 years, serving coffee and fake smiles to people who never saw her as anything more than the woman who refilled their cups. At the neighbour's apartment, Mrs. Chen opened the door with a knowing look. "Late on rent again?" Sarah nodded, fighting back tears. "I'll figure it out. I always do." Mrs. Chen touched her arm gently. "Your father would be proud of you. Officer Jensen was the bravest man I ever knew. You have his courage, Sarah. Don't forget that." Those words echoed in Sarah's mind as she walked to work. Her father had died in the line of duty when she was 18, shot while responding to a robbery. He'd taught her to always watch for danger, to trust her instincts, to never turn away when someone needed help. But courage didn't pay the rent. Courage didn't keep her daughter fed. The morning rush at Riverside Diner was brutal. Sarah moved on autopilot, taking orders, delivering plates, forcing herself to smile at customers who complained about everything from cold coffee to overcooked eggs. Her feet ached, her back screamed, but she couldn't slow down, couldn't stop, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant falling apart. At 8:15, the bell above the door chimed. Sarah glanced up from the coffee pot and froze. The man who walked in didn't belong here. Everything about him screamed money and danger in equal measure. His suit probably cost more than Sarah made in 6 months. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, but it was his eyes that made her pause. They were tired, haunted, the eyes of a man who'd seen too much and carried too many secrets. Marco Valentino scanned the diner with the practiced assessment of someone who always knew where the exits were. He chose the corner booth, the one with a clear view of the entrance and the street beyond. Old habits died hard, even when you were trying to leave that life behind. Sarah approached with her order pad. "Coffee?" "Please, black." His voice was rough, like gravel under tyres. She poured the coffee and left him alone. Something about him set off warning bells in her head. But the diner was busy and she had 5 other tables demanding her attention. Marco stared at his phone, checking the time every 30 seconds. His contact from the FBI was late. The meeting that was supposed to finalise his testimony, his ticket out of 20 years of blood and violence, should have happened 30 minutes ago. The text came at 8:23. "Contact compromised. Rossini knows. They're coming for you. Run." Marco's blood turned to ice. Victor Rossini, the man whose empire Marco had helped build, whose secrets could send him to prison for life, knew about the betrayal, which meant Marco was a dead man walking. He forced himself to stay calm. Panicking got you killed. He'd survived 2 decades in the underworld by keeping his head when everyone else lost theirs. He could survive this. Sarah refilled coffee for the elderly couple in booth 3, then the trucker at the counter, then the businessman who barely looked up from his laptop. The morning dragged on, each minute feeling like an hour. That's when she saw the van. It pulled up across the street. Windows tinted so dark they looked like pools of oil. Something about it felt wrong. Sarah's instincts, the ones her father had spent years honing, started screaming. The van's side door opened. A man stepped out, carrying a duffel bag. He moved with purpose, his eyes scanning the diner before he disappeared into the building directly across the street. Sarah's hand started shaking. She knew that look. Her father had shown her videos during his training, taught her to recognize threats, the way the man moved, the way he'd studied the diner before entering the building, the duffel bag that clearly held something heavy. She glanced at the man in the expensive suit. He was reading a newspaper now, completely oblivious. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't her problem. She had Emma to think about. Getting involved in whatever this was could get her killed. Could leave her daughter an orphan like she'd been. But her father's voice echoed in her memory. The hardest thing about being brave, Sarah, is that you have to choose it every single time, even when you're terrified, especially when you're terrified. Sarah moved to the window, pretending to wipe down a table. In the reflection, she could see the building across the street. Third floor, window open, and there, barely visible, the shape of a man positioning something on a tripod. A rifle. Her breath caught in her throat. The angle was perfect. A clear shot right into the corner booth where the man in the expensive suit sat drinking his coffee. Time seemed to slow down. Sarah looked at Marco, really looked at him. He was someone's son, maybe someone's father. A human being who, in less than 2 minutes, was going to have his head blown off while reading the sports section. She thought about Emma, about the eviction notice, about the fact that getting involved could destroy the fragile life she'd barely managed to hold together. But she also thought about her father, bleeding out on a convenience store floor because he'd run toward danger when everyone else ran away. Sarah made her choice. Her hands shook so badly she could barely hold the pen. She grabbed Marco's bill from her apron pocket and wrote in quick, desperate strokes. Gunman behind you. Escape before it's too late. Back exit through kitchen. She walked to his table, her legs feeling like they might give out at any second. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to pretend she'd seen nothing. "Here's your bill, sir," she said, her voice somehow steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "Whenever you're ready." She placed it face down on the table and met his eyes. For just a second, she let him see her fear, her urgency. Then she turned and walked away. Marco flipped the bill over and read the words. His expression didn't change. 20 years of survival training kept his face perfectly neutral. But his mind raced. He glanced at the window, saw the reflection of the building across the street, and understood immediately. Rossini had sent a sniper, professional, clean, public enough to send a message to anyone else thinking about betraying the family. Marco stood slowly, leaving a $100 bill on the table for an $8 check. "Excuse me, miss, restroom?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "Through the kitchen, last door on the left." Marco nodded and walked toward the kitchen with the casual pace of a man who had all the time in the world. Inside, his mind was calculating distances, angles, timing. Sarah watched him go, then glanced out the window. The sniper was adjusting his position. He'd noticed Marco moving. She had to buy time. Sarah picked up a full tray of dishes and walked toward the kitchen. As she passed the counter, she stumbled, sending the entire tray crashing to the floor. Plates shattered. Glasses exploded. Coffee spread across the tiles like spilled blood. The noise was deafening. Every head in the diner turned. Even the sniper across the street would have heard it. "Oh my God," Sarah screamed. "Tony, I'm so sorry." Tony, the cook, stormed out of the kitchen, his face red with rage. "Sarah, that's the 3rd time this month! What the hell is wrong with you?" "Maybe if you'd fix these broken trays like I asked," Sarah shouted back, her voice shaking with manufactured anger and real terror. "I told you they were dangerous!" The argument escalated. The elderly couple stared. The trucker laughed. The businessman finally looked up from his laptop. Everyone's attention was on Sarah and Tony screaming at each other over shattered dishes. No one noticed Marco slip through the kitchen's back door into the alley. The morning sun hit Marco's face as he stepped outside. He ran, his expensive shoes pounding against the pavement. His car was 2 blocks away, 2 blocks that suddenly felt like 2 miles. Behind him he heard a door slam open, footsteps, running. The sniper had realized his target was gone. Marco turned down an alley, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He hadn't run like this in years. Age and too many cigars had slowed him down. A bullet sparked off the brick wall 6 inches from his head. Marco dove behind a dumpster, his phone already at his ear. "Sal? I need extraction now. Riverside Diner. North side, back alley. Boss, we're 5 minutes out. I don't have 5 minutes." Another bullet slammed into the dumpster, sending up a shower of sparks. Marco looked around desperately. The alley was a dead end. He was trapped. The sniper appeared at the alley entrance, rifle raised. Vince the Viper Rossi, one of Rossini's best. Cold eyes, steady hands, no hesitation. "Nothing personal, Marco," Vince said. "Just business." The screech of tyres cut through the air. 2 black SUVs roared into the alley from the opposite end, the one Marco thought was blocked. Sal must have driven through the barricade. Doors flew open. Marco's men poured out, weapons drawn. Vince fired twice more before retreating, disappearing into the chaos of the city. Strong hands pulled Marco into the SUV. The vehicle accelerated so fast he was thrown against the seat. "You okay, boss?" Sal asked, his weathered face creased with concern. Marco was breathing hard, adrenaline flooding his system. "The waitress at the diner. Find out everything about her, everything. She saved my life." Back at Riverside Diner, Sarah was still shaking. The police had come and gone, taking statements about the noise disturbance someone had reported. She'd told them she heard something, maybe a car backfiring, but saw nothing suspicious. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. That night, Sarah lay awake in bed, Emma sleeping peacefully beside her. She'd saved a man's life today. But what if he was the bad guy? What if she'd helped a monster escape justice? The questions spiraled through her mind until dawn. 3 days later, Marco sat in a safe house on the outskirts of the city, reading the file his men had compiled on Sarah Jensen. Single mother, father was Officer Thomas Jensen, killed in the line of duty. Working 2 jobs, behind on rent, eviction notice. Everything she did was for her daughter. Marco stared at the photo of Sarah and Emma. His own daughter had been 6 years old when she died. Caught in the crossfire of a war Marco had helped start. The pain of that loss had never faded, never dulled. It was a wound that bled fresh every single day. Sarah had a daughter. She had everything to lose, and she'd still chosen to save him. "What do we know about the father?" Marco asked. Officer Jensen was decorated, died responding to a robbery in progress. He went in alone because backup was too far away, saved 2 hostages before he was shot. Marco closed the file. "She comes from courage. It's in her blood." He made a phone call. Then another. Then several more. 1 week later, Sarah was wiping down tables when the black sedan pulled up outside the diner. Her blood turned to ice. The man in the expensive suit stepped out. Marco Valentino walked through the door and Sarah dropped the coffee pot she was holding. It shattered on the floor, but she barely noticed. He sat down in the same corner booth. Same calm expression. Same haunted eyes. Sarah forced herself to walk over, her legs trembling. "What do you want?" "To say thank you," Marco said simply. He slid an envelope across the table. Sarah stared at it like it might explode. "I don't want your money. It's not money. Open it." With shaking hands, Sarah opened the envelope. Inside were documents, legal papers. She read the first one and felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "Deed to your apartment, paid in full. You own it now." "I can't." Second document. "College fund for your daughter, $250,000. She'll never have to worry about tuition." Tears blurred Sarah's vision. "Who are you?" "Someone who made a lot of mistakes," Marco said quietly. "Someone who spent 20 years hurting people. But you reminded me that good people still exist, that courage still exists." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "You have a daughter. I had one too. Her name was Isabella. She was 6 when she died. Wrong place, wrong time, caught in violence that I helped create." Sarah sank into the booth across from him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry, be better than me. Raise Emma to be brave like you, like your father." Marco stood to leave. "There's one more thing in the envelope. Job offer. I'm opening a restaurant, legitimate business. I need a manager I can trust, someone with integrity, someone who does the right thing even when it's terrifying." "Why me?" "Because you saw a stranger about to die and you didn't look away. You didn't make excuses. You acted." Marco's eyes glistened with unshed tears. In my old life, I was surrounded by people who would kill for me, but I never had anyone who would risk their life to save mine. Not until you. He walked toward the door, then turned back. The job starts whenever you're ready. No pressure. But Sarah, you gave me a second chance at life. Let me give you a second chance at living. 6 months passed. Sarah stood in the kitchen of Valentino's, the upscale restaurant that had become the talk of the city. She wore a business suit now instead of a diner uniform. Emma played in the office upstairs, giggling with the security guard Marco had hired to make sure they were always safe. Sarah's apartment was furnished now. The walls were painted. Emma had her own room with shelves full of books. The eviction notices were a distant memory. Marco visited once a month, always briefly. He was in witness protection now, his testimony having brought down the Rossini family, but he made sure Sarah was taken care of. Every month an envelope arrived, investment returns, Marco called them, always with a small handwritten note. This month's note made Sarah cry. Your father would be proud. You have his courage and his heart. Thank you for reminding an old man what it means to be good. Thank you for giving me a reason to be better. Thank you for saving my life so I could finally start living it. Sarah folded the note carefully and placed it in the box with all the others. She walked to the window and looked out at the city. One moment, one choice, one scribbled warning on a bill. It hadn't just saved a life. It had redeemed 2 souls who'd forgotten they deserved redemption. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Share in the comments below. Would you have had the courage to write that warning? And don't forget to like this video if you believe in second chances. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. Until next time, remember that sometimes the smallest acts of bravery create the biggest ripples. Sometimes courage is just doing the right thing when everything in you says to look away. And sometimes a stranger's kindness can change everything.